You're listening to Fatherhood Striving Together, hosted by Kyle Cox, Jason Schuler, and Chris Virgilio.
So hobbies as dads. What hobbies have survived from the time that you were, maybe in college or 20s or even before that, and you still kind of can carry that hobby on to today? What hobbies have survived fatherhood?
For me, sports. Not participating in so much anymore, but watching. I've been a baseball fan specifically since 1988, I'd say.
You're from California, so does that mean
San Francisco
Kurt
Giants?
The Giants? Okay.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
You can't mention Dodger names around me.
So Kurt Gibson though was 1988, right?
Yeah.
That was the year that Kurt Gibson pitched.
So the next year, 1989, was the year of the big earthquake.
That's right.
And so some of my earliest memories of being aware of baseball and who the Giants were was kind of the end of the 88-ish into, which I would have been 7 years old, and then 89 when they were in the Giants were in the World Series with the Oakland A's, so two Bay Area teams, both in it, and then the big earthquake, which I remember very vividly, and and I think it went from there. And then the 49ers were good in the kind of the 80s and the 90s. Mm-hmm. It's not as much as the Dallas Cowboys, but So I had that kind of
stuff. You got the Warriors now? Are you a Warriors fan?
So I've never been a huge basketball fan.
Okay.
And probably a lot of that was because the Warriors were terrible.
Yeah.
Until
more
recently.
Yeah.
I mean, for
decade,
30 plus years, they were horrendous.
Yeah.
So I don't think I ever really got into that. I like hockey. So it's pretty much everything but basketball, I guess.
San Jose Sharks?
The San Jose Sharks, that's right, yeah.
Another franchise who's been snake bitten.
I lived, before I moved out east, my roommate was a season ticket holder to the San Jose Sharks, so we went to several games a year, and I was much more plugged in. Now I haven't watched the game in probably 2 or 3 seasons.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But they're terrible. So
they are. They are bad.
So that's how that goes.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. The thing I like about baseball is to me it's kind of like the male version of a soap opera in a way. Just because because it's on every day.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
the repetition.
In that sense, I get it.
But it's not. You don't have to have the dedication where, like we were talking about, kind of with some of the Marvel stuff or whatever. It's like if you miss one, it's okay. There's another one tomorrow.
Right.
So
there's 162 opportunities to see this team play.
Which is a whole lot of them. Oh my goodness. But,
so what?
So yeah, I wouldn't say it's not like, I think if to liken it to soap operas is kind of rough, not a perfect.
I thought you meant with drama.
The drama. That's a drama. Well, there is. They want to make.
Did
drama
you say
sometimes.
Drama or trauma?
Drama.
Sorry. Is there trauma in baseball? I don't know.
It depends on who you root for.
Guy drops a hot dog trying to grab a foul ball. That's traumatic.
So I like the fact that it's kind of it's always been sort of something you can have on in the background. It's something that it's just there all the time.
Cool.
So I like that. Football's a fun thing to get ready for every Sunday. It's nice to have something to rush home after church to be excited about.
I've always wondered this. Can you answer this for me real quick as a side note? As somebody who grew up on the West Coast, what's it like having football on
10 o'clock in the morning?
10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. No wonder the West Coast doesn't go to church. They're all watching football.
So that could
is
be
that true?
That's probably a big part of it. Actually, I think a lot of people see. I never went to church when I lived out there. I think a lot of the people I knew that did were much earlier in the morning.
Yeah.
Which and then all of our teams, anytime they're on the East Coast or whatever, it was starting later in the day, or earlier in the day, I should say, like 10 o'clock. So being a West Coast sports fan who lives on the East Coast is absolutely brutal too.
Yeah.
For things like, I mean, football is not really the same, but if I'm going to watch a weeknight baseball game, hockey game, whatever, I'll admit I have watched some basketball when the Warriors are doing well in the playoffs and stuff, because just playoffs in any sport are just
they're
a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, they're exciting.
So, but you get these games that start like 10 o'clock at night or 9:30 at night or something like that.
Crazy.
And Yeah. So if I've got a work schedule and I got to be at work at 6 o'clock the next morning or something, and like,
Not going to catch that game.
yeah. So
I've lived in all 4 major U.S. time zones. I lived in California for 4 years. I lived in Colorado for 1.5 years. I lived in Oklahoma for 5.5 years, and I've lived in North Carolina the rest. And by far, my favorite time zone for sports is Central Time Zone.
Say the Central has to
It's
be
the
it.
Central Time Zone because when I was in college for 4 years, it was, you're sitting in church at 10 a.m. and you just got a notification that your fantasy team has locked. And it's like, oh no.
Oh, I forgot.
Oh no, it's 10 a.m. I didn't anticipate this. And so it was cool because you would get to your lunch stop after church by like the 4th quarter. So that was cool because you got to see the 4th quarter, and then all the afternoon games were earlier. But the East Coast, man, I grew up here. It's a drag. Like the college basketball national championship game tips off at 9 p.m.
oh yeah.
It's like I want to be in the bed by 9 p.m. Like focusing on going to sleep by 9. It's like this game just started. Like when the NBA playoffs started and you had multiple games every night, some of those, the Lakers Nuggets series tipped off at 10:30 at night. It's like, what are we doing?
Right.
I got to be up till 12:30, 1 o'clock some nights
probably
before
1.
these games go off.
Yeah.
And if it's game 1 or 2, fine. But game 6, game 7, like,
well, championship series, that's always like they're trying to get prime time on the East Coast.
yeah.
And still catch part of prime time on the West Coast,
Right.
right? So that's why you get like the usually a game on the East Coast wouldn't start past 7 o'clock, right? Well, you get the 8 o'clock starts then, and then it's nuts. And everything in the playoffs and championships always goes slower. The games always take like probably 30%
Commercials are a
longer or
little
something.
longer.
Yeah. All that stuff.
So Central Time Zone's the where to be. Got it.
Now, you mentioned basketball on the West Coast, college basketball, I think you talked about. So being a native Californian, I can say this isn't 100%, but people on the West Coast give almost no cares about college sports. College sports is so down here that I was barely aware of it most of the time. Nobody ever talked about college sports because there's so many professional teams
Right.
Yeah.
in everything. California has 5 baseball teams, soon to be 4. We used to have 5 football teams at one point. 4 football, something like that.
See,
But
Oakland is the
it's-
common thread in that number decreasing.
Oakland is
What is wrong
Oakland
with you,
is
Oakland?
The oddball. They come and they go.
Get it together.
But even the Rams, the Rams were in California,
Louis,
were
yeah.
Los Angeles when I was growing up,
Yeah.
and so were the Raiders, and now neither of them are in California. The Rams,
The
are
Rams
back.
are back.
Rams are back.
Rams
It's
are
so
back.
weird.
They're back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the Chargers are no longer in San Diego. But anyway, there's so many sports teams. The Bay Area has 2 basketball teams, if you count Sacramento. But there's a ton of these things. So college, no.
Irrelevant.
Yeah, almost. But out here, completely different.
Oh, yeah.
Completely different. Where college sports are like the big ones. And I think that's because there's a lot less pro teams. Like North Carolina has a hockey team and a
Football team.
Football and basketball.
I guess you could claim the football team, the Carolina
Yeah.
Panthers.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and you get into states that don't even have professional teams.
Right,
That
right.
a lot of the colleges around here, even though we have professional teams, they play them in their conference. So, like, you play a team from South Carolina, that is their professional team. You play a team from Alabama, that is their professional team, right?
Right.
They
Yeah.
don't have one.
Yeah.
So, okay, so sports, we probably will have a very common thread, Jason. Hobby that has survived the test of time into fatherhood.
That's it. Sports is the only one. I mean, my short answer would have been none. None of my hobbies. But no, sports. I like to go to games, but I love to watch games. And like you guys said with championship stuff, I will not watch golf until Sunday, and I will likely fall asleep watching it. I don't watch any NASCAR, but NASCAR's huge here in North Carolina.
Yes, it is.
I don't watch hockey until the playoffs, and I always watch the Stanley Cup because it's the coolest trophy
It
in
is.
sports.
Hands down.
Big time March Madness fan. Like my wife's family's looking to do some kind of family vacation next year, and the spring was one of the options. And I looked on my calendar. I'm like, well, that's the first weekend of March Madness, because I've got it on the calendar.
You
I want to
blacked
know.
out already?
Well, it's not blacked out, but it's penciled in. Like I want to know that first 2 days when you go from 64 teams down to 16 in 4 days.
Yeah.
It's like, that's electric. When you've got a 16 seed that's hitting shots on Virginia like a few years ago, that's electric. And I would say I like collegiate sports because it's more purist. That was definitely the case pre-NIL. I don't know that that's necessarily the case anymore.
No, not anymore.
But I love sports, and I follow the NBA. I love basketball. I love baseball, football, a little bit of soccer, a little bit of golf. I mean, if it's Wimbledon finals, I'll probably watch.
Oh, really?
I'll probably tune in. Soccer, I will watch. I would go to an MLS game. On missions trips, I've tried to go to some European games before, and it just never works out because they're all on Sundays. Like, it's almost impossible to do ministry on a Sunday in Europe and also make it to a game or a match somewhere.
Yeah.
So, no, I follow just about everything, and I really love sports. And it's cool because my kids are watching sports with me now because my son likes to play some sports. He'll watch some with me. My daughter, who's 9, is really into sports. And so it's fun. It's fun to watch sports and take my kids to games and do stuff with them. We'll do some minor league baseball around here.
Yeah,
But that's about it. When you work full time and you have a family and you've got kids, those guys that just play golf all the time or play video games all the time, I can't relate well to those guys. Like I've played golf before, but I'm not fun to play golf with because I'm not good at it. I don't take it seriously.
No.
So if you've got 3 dudes that are serious golfers and you're looking for a 4th, I am not your guy.
I actually stress out when I golf with people because I am so bad that in my personality, I'm thinking I'm detracting for the fun that I know you guys who love this are going to have.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be a joy kill or a drag. So don't even bring me because every single time I hit it, it's going right. I don't care how I line up. It's going right.
Yeah.
Especially when I pull out the driver.
My brother-in-law is a huge golfer, and there's this trip that he goes on in Oregon every couple years. It's very expensive. It's a very exclusive course, and he's invited me several times. And I politely decline every time because I'm not going to go. I'm not going to have fun. Like after 18 holes, like I'm gassed. My hands hurt. It's not enjoyable to me. I don't like it. I've got a guy in my Connect group that went to the same course, and in a period of 4 days, he played 36 holes, 3 straight days, and then another day he only got 18. And I'm like, dude, you played 7 courses.
That's a tournament.
In 4 days.
Or 2, almost.
Yeah, almost 2.
Seven rounds in 4 days. And he and 3 other guys did it. And it's like, I'm
cool.
glad that sounds fun for you. That's a fun hobby for you to have. It's not for me.
Not for me.
So Chris and I have given ours. Kyle, what about you?
Sports are probably the easy one. I'm sitting here listening to you guys thinking, let me try and get some type of content that's different. But honestly, that is kind of like the hobby that everybody kind of defaults to. Our family, my wife included, loves watching sports, going to games, participating. I guess if you want to get really specific, I mean, we're a pretty big soccer family. So that definitely comes into play in our house a lot. So when we were talking about time differences, the time difference with us in England, because we're into the Premier League primarily, is great. As if a game's on Saturday, they do play games on Saturday and Sundays. If they're Sundays, it's usually during church, which is okay because YouTube TV is great for recording things. But if it's on a Saturday, it's really fun if we have a free Saturday morning, which is rare, to sit down with my breakfast at 7:30 or 9 o'clock and be able to have a game on. And my sons, are into it. They watch it with me. We enjoy it a lot. My older son really has gotten into it. He knows players' names and wants to know more stats. And so we can really get into kind of the deeper storylines of our team. So yeah, my kids will watch anything. My kids will watch NASCAR. My son will. I tend to make jokes about NASCAR, hoping that he doesn't become a lover of the sport. Despite my best efforts, he is still enjoying it and still wants to. I think because of our church family here, who continue to, certain people in our church like NASCAR enough, and he can go to them and they feed that beast.
Okay.
So yeah, there's that. In terms of hobbies that did not survive fatherhood, actually golf. I would say, as much as I just said, as I'm terrible, there was a little window of time in my life when I was in college and just out of college where the guy friends who I had at the time really got into golf, and none of us were good. So we didn't take it seriously. We went to like junk public courses. We'd go at twilight. We'd walk, so we wouldn't pay for cart fees or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah,
We-
you don't want to make.
we
You don't
are
want it to be
economical.
expensive.
Yeah, we
Right.
were very economical and frugal when it
Not
came to our
paying for
golfing
this.
hobby. I didn't purchase really nice golf balls. The majority of the balls were probably like range balls that I found, quote unquote. And but then when I started dating my wife, and then shortly thereafter once we got married, my schedule changed, and so the time to golf disappeared. And it wasn't like it wasn't like a huge loss in my life. So I know for some people, like, that would be like, whoa, that's a huge life change. For me, it was just like, oh, that's just something that I used to do. It was fun. It was, in all sense of the word, a hobby. It really was.
Yeah.
But then once my wife came along, I was more interested in her than I was 3 or 4 hours, hitting a white ball around and then finding it in the woods later and trying to make it into a small hole. When you say anything like that, it just kind of removes the mystique of it, doesn't it? But anyway, so that's one that just definitely went away for me. Any others that kind of just faded into obscurity, maybe for you guys?
For me, definitely. I mean, it's sports related, which is, we got a strong theme that runs between us here. So I was a volleyball coach for about 16 years before really getting married, I'd say. But and then I tried. So I pretty much stopped having a regular job. It makes it hard, especially a one like mine where my schedule rotates. I'm working night shifts, I work day shifts, not always Monday through Friday sort of thing. It kind of it's made it really difficult for me to keep doing it. And I'm the sort of guy who, I mentioned this before, but I don't like kind of just every once in a while being involved. Like, if I'm going to be with a team, I want to be there for them all the time. I want to contribute. So I've never been very good at being the guy who's just here like once a week or every so often. So I tried to, a couple years ago, I actually tried to do a season with a volleyball club here in Greensboro. And but it was that was the sort of relationship that I had with the whole thing. I wasn't coaching a team. I was like a roaming coach. I'd go to practice and just help out wherever I need help. They needed help, which was okay because I got to do a whole bunch of different age groups, a whole bunch of different types of players, skill levels, and stuff like that. And I went to one tournament, and a volleyball tournament. And this is something that I think we talked a bit about the sports stuff. Remember when we talked about kids and sports and all that? So it's sort of an interesting. It kind of goes with that though. It's like I went. It was Friday night. It was in Gatlinburg, so I got to go out to. That was my first time going to the Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg area, and got to head out there. It was in January, so it was freezing cold. That was a fun drive in the Tesla, which doesn't do well in cold, as it turns out. And so that was my one and only experience going to a volleyball tournament or a sports tournament of any kind in North Carolina. And so I did that, got home, and I was like, yeah, I can't keep doing this. I can't figure out a way to make it work. I would love for it to be a part of my life, but now I have 4 kids, and I don't. The lifestyle that I used to live before being married and everything with volleyball tournaments, like every other weekend, I'd be gone for 3 days, all over the country, just around, bing, 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 2 or 3 nights a week, going to practices and stuff. And so that just doesn't fit at all.
Yeah,
and I'm okay with that. But I still enjoy watching it. So if there's something obscure sports-wise that I watch, it's the only thing that I'm really plugged into usually at all in sports is college volleyball in terms of the college world. which is very odd. But I've been to a Final Four for that. It's not the same as all the rest of them, but it was in Omaha, which is like the college volleyball mecca of the country, I think. Which you might not think that, but
I would never have guessed Omaha.
Super popular in Omaha.
You sure you're not talking about college baseball?
Well,
college
baseball
volleyball
for men is baseball, but I think for women,
For women?
Because
for
isn't
volleyball,
Nebraska one of like the top teams in women's volleyball?
Yep, regularly. Yeah. I think they did one of these out. They did a couple seasons ago. They did like an outdoor match. It was Nebraska and somebody else, and it was in whatever I think Nebraska's football stadium it is, and they set like all sorts of records for most people ever seeing a volleyball. They packed that place, like 100,000 people for a college volleyball match.
I'm always fascinated when they put other sports into like those big football spaces, because a football field, obviously being 120 yards big, fills up some space. But then you take a volleyball court that's probably small. It's smaller.
They do with basketball too.
Yeah,
basketball is bigger than volleyball.
Volleyball's smaller than a basketball court,
Yep.
and then you're putting 90,000+ people to watch. Like, could you imagine being in the 500 section of that thing? Like, what did I just see? Like,
especially volleyball, because the court is so much smaller than even
and like
basketball.
The ball's
court.
big. I mean,
the ball is big. Hey, the speck is a little bit bigger than the other speck. I like that. That's funny. Oh man, Jason, any hobbies you can remember have kind of gone by the wayside?
No, I mean, not really. I feel like maybe I was just a boring person, because I used to read and do sports, now I still do those things, and so I've tried to hold on to. I'm not really huge on hobbies. Like, some people are like, "What are your hobbies?" Like, that's never a go-to question for me to ask someone I'm getting to know, because I myself don't have like crazy amount of hobbies.
I have to think about like, well, what is a define a hobby?
What classifies as a hobby? I mean, when I was a kid, I played a lot of Legos, but I remember like that I played with Legos a lot, a couple months ago, because my son's into Legos, my kids play Legos. And so
that hobby's still alive.
I guess it's still alive. I guess I've maintained the few hobbies that I've had over life.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. I don't think that's a bad thing. You should keep that Lego hobby going.
Yeah.
Go strong.
For sure.
Yeah.
Kyle, anything that what didn't make the cut in fatherhood?
Like I said, the golfing thing, but that was a small span of time.
Yeah.
I honestly, this is partly, I think some of these hobbies, it's just kind of the nature of life change. Like you said, Chris, like I had a job and I have a family, so your schedule changes, and so time is just split elsewhere. So I think this one would be one that I would say, because of finances, get redirected, right? Like money starts going towards kids' things rather than, you and your wife, or you by yourself when you're a bachelor. I loved traveling, and I did so much. Like, I drove so many different places. I would do day trips. Like, I lived in the Washington, D.C. area my whole life until my wife and I moved out of there in 2013, and I would go like from DC area to the eastern shore of Maryland to the coast in a day and back. I'd do that all the time. Friends and I would get together. We'd go do that and hit putt courses, kind of like your friend you were talking about, your brother-in-law who golfed that much. We would do that with putt, but in a day, and it would be epic, and it would be awesome. So I did a lot more traveling when I was single, and even when my wife and I were, either dating or, married without children for that very small span of time. We had that window, just because it was, I had more expendable income to do it. I had a lot more free time to do it. And quite honestly, logistically, how difficult it is to, like, you guys know, traveling with kids can sometimes just be a nightmare to plan and game plan all the logistics and the amount of bathroom breaks you take. I mean, I took one trip in college where I went from the DC area up to Columbus, Ohio, which is probably about a 7-hour-ish drive, and I literally did it with no stops.
That's impressive.
Just went to the bathroom, in my dorm, packed up a drink or in a bag of chips, and I just hightailed it out of there.
Raw dog.
I was gone. Yeah, and I was gone. And I was there. Met up with my friends who were up there. yeah, in college, that kind of stuff was just kind of the norm for me. Just day trips and traveling was something that I just enjoyed. I did have friends. I didn't do it with them, but I had friends in college because I went to school right outside the D.C. area, and they were both from the 95 corridor in the Northeast, and they said, "Dude, we are so tired of college food." And it's like, okay, so what are you feeling? Cheesesteak. I was like, okay, well, like there's the Steak Escape or whatever in the mall. You going there? No.
Now we're going to Philly.
We're going to Philly. And so they did. They packed up, and it was about 3:30, and class had just gotten out. They're like, we're going to be there in time for dinner. They drove up to Philly. I didn't go with them. They offered, do you want us to bring you one back? And all I could imagine was a Philly cheesesteak in a brown paper bag arriving at my dorm room at about 9:30 or 10 o'clock. The bag is essentially disintegrated at that point. It's cold, lukewarm, and thinking, do I want to eat that at 10 o'clock? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you did.
Absolutely, I wanted to. Because why wouldn't you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, that's a hobby that definitely just naturally just faded away.
I did some stuff like that in college where you just up and go on a trip.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember doing that. But
Those are great adventures.
maybe one of the reasons I don't have those set hobbies is I never lived a bachelor's life. Like I literally went from high school to college, and then I graduated college in May. I got married in June, and I started working at a church in July. And so, there was no couple years living in an apartment with some other dude who was my roommate. There was no the dating scene. There was none of that. Mm-hmm. And so maybe I was spared from picking up beautiful hobbies that I can no longer relish
reminisce about.
Yeah.
That's funny. A lot of it just came out of that college life. And, I had about a 2-year window when I graduated till I got married. So I was dating my wife for most of that time, but I had about a 2-year window outside of college too, where I got to just enjoy just experiencing things as a young 20-year-old and trying new things and not having too much of a care in the world. Even if I was working, it was like, who cares? I'll be back, get 4 hours of sleep. We'll function. We can do that. Now that sounds like a terrible life choice.
Oh, yeah.
And one that I would probably take about 4 days to recover from if I did it now. But yeah, those are some of those things that I remember doing.
I played ice hockey for a few years, adult ice hockey, like beginners adult ice hockey. I just decided one day that, I want to try that because this is back in California. So in San Jose, we had a huge ice hockey base there. So supposedly it's the largest base of adults playing hockey out like west of the Mississippi, I guess. I don't know how big that is, but it was a lot of people. So I played in an adult hockey league for 3 years, and then I moved to upstate New York, and very small town comparatively speaking, and there wasn't as much of that. I played for one season in a little rink we had there. And I was playing there wasn't enough people for there to be like a whole league of people who were like me, who are not the greatest skaters. I'm not terrible, but who are kind of new to it, aren't looking to be pros or anything. And I was playing against people who were old college players from wherever, who had been skating and playing since they were walking and stuff. And it was like, man, I'm getting my butt kicked. Plus, I don't know what it is about hockey, but hockey seems to be something that you go when there's rink time, and your game might start at 10:30 at night, 11 o'clock at night or something like that. And so I get home, I'm stinky, I'm sweaty, and I got to be at work at 6 o'clock the next morning. It seems to be the thing that kind of keeps happening with me. It's so you talk about like, there's like a 4 hours of sleep type of situation right there, right? And then
not for it.
Yeah, so,
we've got a guy in our Connect group here at our church, and he is in one of those hockey leagues.
Okay.
And he is, I'll say he's 39 or 40, and he's always loved hockey. Mm-hmm. He was never collegiate level. He just always did it at the recreational level.
It's a great game to play.
He's still going, and he invites me to his hockey games. And one of these days I'm going to go, but I've not been able to make it yet. But you're right. They play when they get ice time.
Yeah.
And so the last couple of games he's invited me to were in, probably half hour from my house. and they start at 10:30, 11:30, and I'm like, bro, man, I love you. I'm not coming to your hockey game at 11 o'clock at night. Like, I hope to have been in bed by a minimum of an hour at that point. My kids are down. Like, I'll go watch an NBA Finals game once in a while, but that's not an 11 o'clock start time. Like, I can't commit to this. You're going to play 3 periods of hockey at 11 o'clock? He's like, it's awesome. But he said the same thing you did. Like, I get home at 2, I got a shower, and I'm like, I don't love any kind of game that much to do that at my age.
Yeah, that'd be tough.
That honestly, if you've never played it before, just like you sign up for a class or something. It is one of the hardest things you'll ever do.
Have you been checked into the boards pretty hard?
Yeah.
Did you check other guys?
So I never played in a league where you're really allowed.
Is that a rush for you to do that?
Yeah,
I think it would be.
I've never really. I mean, so there's emotion, and we're men.
Yeah,
you get emotional, and all of a sudden somebody does something that kind of rubs you the wrong way.
Sure.
And next thing you know, you're trying to put them into the boards a little harder than you're supposed to, or they're doing the same to you. And I mean, that is a game where there's penalties.
So we've got a minor league hockey team here in North Carolina. It's at Winston-Salem, the Carolina Thunderbirds,
which I just became aware of in the last couple of months, really.
So probably 4 or 5 years ago, this guy I'm telling you about, that's where his games are.
Okay, yeah.
And he says, hey, we got to do a class activity to this minor league hockey game. And I'm like, I mean, if you really want to, we can. Like, whatever. Why don't you call them, get us a group rate? You put the whole thing together. You want to do it, you just do it. And so he did it. And he had like, I don't know, maybe 10 to 12 people come. It wasn't well attended. I couldn't even come because of the date he picked. I was gone. And he was like, yeah, we had a good time. I really want to do it again next year when you're in town. And I'm like, okay. So I told my wife, I'm like, I'm just going to do it. We'll do a class activity. I'll really push it. And my philosophy is we bring the fun with us. You know, if we're going to do it, we're going to have fun because we're there. Doesn't matter who else shows up. So I pushed it hard. We had 30 people, 40 people show up from our class, families, to go to this minor league hockey game. I kid you not. It is the most fun activity we do as a class, and we do it every year. And they play this team. They don't play a lot of hockey. Like, they are fighting the entire time. And this first game that I went to, it was so electric. It was a team from Watertown, Wisconsin, and they came here. And there was obviously beef with these two teams, but they were fighting like seconds into the game. Like, first period, seconds into the game.
It's like slap shot, right?
They're fighting. And I'm like, this is awesome. Like, guys are getting sent off the ice. Guys are getting to the penalty box. I kid you not. There were at least 6 players that were, I guess, kicked out of the game for both teams. It was an electric atmosphere. One time, a guy from their team hit a guy from our team so hard, put him into the boards. He went to the penalty box. Not lying. There are fans crawling over to get at him into the penalty box. Security guards were stepping in. Police officers were stepping in. It was unbelievable. And he was like, what'd you think? And I'm like, this is the best thing we've ever done. When is the next? So we came back the next year, and he was like, you want to do it again? I said, yeah, we're doing it again. I said, well, I'm going to get all the people. We took like 40 people and families that we took to this game. And I'm like, I want to make sure they're playing Watertown. Sure enough, same thing. They were fighting. This past year we went. It was not as good of a game. Much more hockey than fighting. I was very disappointed, and it was not against Watertown. So I was disappointed in that. But
you went to the ice rink and a hockey game showed up.
That's exactly what happened.
WWE's coming to town regularly, I think, though. So that's more up your
maybe that's another class activity we'll do.
You know, just a quick little side note. When you talked about like adult hockey in any adult sport league, so that's one thing. Like, if I could, I would like to jump into that, like playing adult soccer.
Yeah.
But and there's been a couple of different people who I know here at the church and at the school as well that we send our kids to, that the adults have asked me like, "Hey, will you come out and play with us?" And every time it just doesn't work out. It's the schedule. It's usually a Sunday night or it's a Wednesday night when we've got church activities going on. So it's just never going to work. But one thing I'm always curious about, and I don't know how, I haven't played, so I don't know how I would handle it. But the same dynamic is what I've heard is that here you can go into like there's levels, so like C, B, and A league.
Sure. Yeah.
So you get different rec. I wouldn't want to find myself in the C league because I'd want to have some more a little bit more competition, challenge myself, but also won't want to get into a game with a 20-year-old or 19-year-old who is pretty much trying to, he didn't make his D3 college team, but he's good enough to play there, and he's just killing it, right?
Yeah.
So finding the happy balance, I feel like, does that even exist? Because then you have this whole thing, so let's say we find ourselves in the B league, and then you've got people who are out there just saying, man, hey, don't hurt me. I got to work tomorrow, right? And then you got other people who are out there just going try hard, and they're just they're out for blood. This is their Stanley Cup. This is their World Cup. And so I want to enjoy the game. I want to be challenged. I want to just, continue to play because I enjoy the game and I like to keep my skills sharp. But does that exist, in your experience in adult sports?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So
that's encouraging.
It seemed like I was never in charge of like the manager of a team or anything in terms of getting people on the roster and stuff like that. But it was always an interesting balance act of how many ringers can you get on your roster before everybody else is going to be really upset.
Oh, gosh.
So you'd go up against these teams and be like, these guys, they had these loose rules. So there was over 10,000 people playing in this league.
That's a lot more than what we're talking about here.
10,000 players. So
that's
a lot
hard
of people
to wrap
are
my
on
head
multiple
around.
teams.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying it's a big hockey base, right? So I was in the double D league or something like that.
Okay.
Because it was beginners. It was complete beginners. And hockey is a game where I could go on a soccer field, run around and kick a ball, right?
Yeah.
You cannot, with
can't
zero
strap on
experience,
skates.
hop on a sheet of ice and be able to move and do anything. Mm-hmm. So there's a huge difference between guys who can move around a little bit, skate backwards, play defense. Not an easy sport. That's why. That's one of the reasons I really liked it, because I was struggling. Because it's a struggle when you're brand new.
You like the challenge.
It was so different, and so a different kind of challenge that you're not going to really get picking up anything else. Except, if you've never swung a baseball bat before at a ball, and you jump into that could probably be pretty hard, but it's not like you can't walk,
Yeah. Or
you can't
throw
and
and catch. Throwing and catching is pretty basic.
So it's it's so unique in that respect. I think that those who can't are going to be kind of with others who can't.
Yeah.
So you don't have to. That's why you don't just jump. Oh, well, I'll just jump into the C, B level. No.
Yeah.
Did you go to any of the other higher levels and watch those dudes tear it up out there?
Oh yeah, it was kind of like you were saying, where it's these guys who were maybe used to be college players but everybody, all the guys in the A level and everything, or the B level even, were not from California, because nobody grows up playing hockey in California.
Right.
Except now they're starting to. But so they were all from out of town. They played since they were whatever, like I said. And it's just, they were allowed to hit each other. They didn't have to wear the cages on their helmets and stuff. It's a very different game. It's a lot like watching a kind of a lower level minor league game, I guess.
I think that happy medium depends more on the person than the sport. I think there will, in every venue of life, there will be people who it makes them a bad person, or they take it to the extreme and they can't handle. They can't handle it.
That's why we can't have nice things.
This is why we cannot have nice things.
Thanks for listening to the Fatherhood Striving Together podcast. Be sure to follow or subscribe to catch future episodes. Consider leaving a 5-star review and look for more future content coming soon.
Yeah, sure, old-time hockey.